1,000 years ago, a bold Viking, Thorgils Skarthi, in the service of the King of Norway, landed on these English shores and set up a fort called Scarborough. Here he established a Norwegian settlement, but this Viking stronghold was burnt to the ground 100 years later, and for 40 years lay fallow until the arrival of the Norman barons. Thorgils Skarthi's name lives on in the tales of the Norsemen, the Icelandic sagas, and in the name of Scarborough, or, as it is known today, Scarborough.
This is my intense video of Scarborough, a rare treat for the connoisseur. And today we're going to tell you a few stories about our hometown. There's our Denis, enjoying the ride. I first met Denis in this building, actually. This was our old school. We were 11 years old, and I was in the market for a fat sidekick, and he fit the bill. Somehow, by the time we left school, we were really good mates. We did drama together. We had exactly the same banal sense of humour, I suppose. We just always clicked. We egg each other on. We bring out the worst in each other, basically. I think that's what all best mates should do, really. You know, if he has a stupid idea and I think it's funny, we'll do it, and vice versa. This is all around where we lived, isn't it?
On the north side.
This was our stomping grounds. The cemetery was a big playground. So Scarborough's got two bays. The south bay, which is the scroty bay, and the north bay, which is the posh end. And me and Den lived on the posh end.
But it was like it's arcades and ice creams on the south side.
Is this the roundabout where we came up with the band name?
No.
Oh.
No.
I thought it might be.
Nice try, Steve. It's not that easy. First met Steve at Graham's school. We were in drama together, and along with a few other kids, we used to share the same walk home. He was a skinny young thing. I remember Steve being a little bit geeky. He was dead skinny and wiry. He had this funny walk. Didn't seem to have that many friends. So I thought it might be nice to try and cheer him up a bit, hang around with him a bit. And then I realised he got the same sort of sixth sense of humour as I had, and he was listening to similar music to what I was listening to. So we used to go to a few gigs together. It was like being in a band with Karen Carpenter. Whiny, miserable.
I think my early memories of Denis and Steve are not separate. I think I remember them together. I think they were actually quite shy at the beginning. But as I got to know them, the thing that really struck me about them, that I realised, was there was this kind of naivety about both of them. It was as though they hadn't seen the rule book that said you're not allowed to do that. And because they hadn't seen it, they just thought, let's do this.
When I first met Denis and Steve, I thought they were just a laugh. I remember going round to their house, and Denis had sort of said, "I'll come round to Stevie's, we've got some songs, and have a listen." So I just went round and to Steve's mum and dad's house. It was up in this loft, and they just played these songs. They were awful. They had stuff like that. I think they had like Clouds from Sodding Nowhere, Laura's Sister. I think some stuff like that. They had like really short, daft songs, and they were really funny and they were really inept. And I just thought these are brilliant because they were just bickering and they were funny, you know.
But it was very quiet and peaceful growing up round here.
Scarborough was a place that old people came to die, basically, wasn't it?
It was. You got Peazone Park just there. So basically Peazone Park was between our houses, wasn't it?
So sometimes I'd walk through it, but I worked out that this was the flatter route because Scarborough's quite hilly.
You could play football in the street here practically, because there's
nothing going on.
Whereas that's completely changed everywhere else in Britain, I think. It's like, but here it's, look, you can just, and we just played out, didn't we? We were just out in the street and
yeah, I mean,
so quiet.
Kids' telly stopped at 6 o'clock, didn't it?
Yeah.
But there was no iPads, and there was none of that internet business. So you had to make your own fun. So we did.
We did.
And this is where we would meet.
Peazone Park.
It's a very big attraction for folk who happen to live on North Side. It's got a bridge to get to Tree Walk. It's an island covered in trees.
Peazone Park is a very big attraction for folk who happen to be on North Side. It's got a bridge to get to Tree Walk. It's an island covered in trees. Come on, folks, hire a boat.
So we wrote about Peazone Park because you could sit there and you could feel it and touch it, and it was nearly like we were writing tourist information films for Scarborough and Yorkshire for anybody who'd never been before. So we were like bringing to life some of the local attractions in song.
Back to Peazone Park, where the peace and quiet is about to be broken. The boating lake is transformed into a stage for a famous naval battle. Models of merchant ships and warships, submarines and aircraft, and an enemy-held port are involved in a story filled with action and enacted with amazing realism.
I grew up in Scarborough. I remember when Scarborough was different. I remember when there was the working chairlift up to the top of Peazone Park, and there was the amusements and the zoo and the plastic dinosaurs and the Chimps Tea Party, and Peazone Park was a big attraction at the time. All the stuff that they wrote whimsical songs about these declining attractions of Scarborough. I understood all that, and I just thought it was really funny.
What a nice place.
So I live just up there.
And I live just up there. But you could be in here all day. There's plenty to do.
Peazone Park is full of action. There's a naval battle twice a week.
The Naval Battle is a unique water sport event. It takes place in Scarborough in Peazone Park, involving replica World War II boats that are about 12 foot long, with a human lying inside it who drives it, operates it, where aeroplanes come down on wires and throw bombs at them until they flood and turn over.
It's a holiday treat for everyone. A Scarborough women finally treat yourself to an ice cream.
Just like Lennon and McCartney, living at other sides of Liverpool, except Scarborough's a lot better. In Strawberry Fields, my arse. Fucking Peazone Park's a lot better song. So can you remember the cable car?
I can indeed.
Indeed.
Don't tell me you were on it when it broke. So what happened to it? Go on, the historian.
I don't know why they stopped running it. Well, the structures are still there. Good lick of paint, a new wire, and you'll be off.
It's a sea-swept little town in the middle of nowhere. You're talking 50 miles from absolutely anywhere. But as a result of that, it generates its own culture, and that really came out in the music. The bands were very different. I think they were totally influenced by the fact that we are miles from anywhere, and you've got a lot of really kind of quite bizarre things that go on. You're talking about the fun fairs, the mini railway, the golf. That element really shaped them, and it shaped their music, definitely. That's what attracted me to the Granddads in the first place.
You've got the sea at the end of your road, and I've always been fascinated by the sea because you've got suburbia, which is all little neat lawns, very tidy. You get to the sea and it's just madness. You go 100 yards out in the sea and you're dead. It's just like a line drawn through everything, and the sound of the sea, I used to love that as well, and the desolation as well. It's very dark and windy and rainy. I love that as well. But it was definitely a sense that culture was always happening somewhere else.
I was listening to all sorts at the time. It was mainly punk stuff. I used to love Husker Du, Minutemen, Meat Puppets, American
Americana, wasn't it?
American punk, noisy stuff. I used to love noisy stuff.
All Black Flag, all the SST stuff.
I so wanted to be in a band, but I knew I was never going to be that good.
I mean, they were all angry. They were angry, like kind of everything sucked, and it was all about what was wrong with everywhere. Whereas what we did, we've turned it on its head and wrote about what we liked, which was really soft. It was proper soft. We like ice creams, we like donkeys, we like the seaside.
Scarborough's got a mini railway and it's jumping great. It's got a real steam engine and a real driver on footplate. And if you ever see it, you will stand in awe as it goes from a piece of park right down to the foreshore. And if you want to ride it, it'll cost you 45.
Mini Railway was a protest song. I mean, at the time, it was a huge kind of controversy in Scarborough that they were building the sewage plant in the first place. The really big deal for those two guys was that it stopped the railway going all the way to Scarborough Mills, and I believe there were no reduction in the prices as a result of that, and I think they were indignant.
I think the anger that we were getting from some of the Husker Du stuff and some of the American music really got inside us, and it was like, well, if I was Bob Mould and the Mini Railway wasn't going as far as it should have been, how would I write about it? I would write about it in an angry style.
This is Scarborough's miniature railway. It's been running since 1931.
This train takes us down to the beach.
Scarborough's got the greatest mini railway in the whole of the Britain. One engine's called Neptune and t'other's called Turritin. The engine's got a little whistle and it gives a little tune as it winds its merry way past a kindle and a water chute. And if you want to ride it, cost you.
Only gone halfway, as expressed in our song, and I'm devastated, mate.
It used to go right over there.
That's where we should have gone. It's not. I just don't get value for money anymore. No. So we shall continue protesting and maybe get some.
Grandad's come from somewhere that people don't pass through on their way to somewhere else. So it has a different feel to other towns. There's a sense of isolation about it. The people that go there for a reason, and that gives it a very different quality.
In a sense, that isolation makes great art, and I think all the best music has always been made by people living in really weird little places, really cut off from other people. Cities can drive culture, but a lot of the time everyone in the cities trying not to be uncool.
Denis and Steve, you were never cool. They were so uncool that they were cool.
The beauty of the North Sea, it makes every other sea you go paddling in seem nice. So I used to go winkling.
Did you eat the winkles? I thought you just picked them.
Why would you pick them if
Well,
you're not
then
going
to
eat
throw
them?
them back in the sea.
What kind of sport is that?
Winkling.
Let's pick a snail off a rock and throw it in the sea. Why would you do that? It's seafood, you div.
All right, yeah, but you wouldn't eat it raw, would you?
No, you take it home.
This is before that sushi. Sushi was invented.
You're not going to do sushi with snails and shit, are you? You take it home, you put them in a pot, you boil them up, and then you get your pin, and you just sit and eat them.
What's the pin for?
To get the
Didn't you have forks?
Are you from the seaside? The sea's rough, the sea's cold, it's grey, it's a bit miserable, but if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind that, you're going to love Scarborough. It's a down-to-earth town. Northern people are down to earth. You can't be fancy about stuff here. You just got to get on with it and like it and love it. Don't come here and expect the weather to be lovely, not to be windy. Don't expect the seagulls to behave. You know, you just got to get on with it, and then you'll love it. You get out of it what you put into it, basically, and you need to put in a bit of effort.
As far as I'm aware, I think it is the first proper seaside resort in Britain. In the 19th century, when spas were really popular, people would come and take the water, and then late Victorian period, bathing came in, you know. And then it's a beautiful place to get to. It's not that far from all the major industrial centres of Leeds, Bradford, Huddersfield, and then up the coast of Middlesbrough. The factories would close, they'd go to the seaside, you know, and they'd either go to the west coast, they'd go to Blackpool, they'd come to the east coast, they'd come to Scarborough. So it flourished as a kind of entertainment resort, if you like, despite the British weather, you know, but that's kind of what happened. And it grew up as a town to enjoy yourself in. You've got the sea, you know, if you've got your lonely existential angst, you can go and stand and look at the cliffs and contemplate the universe. Or you can go down the slots and it's gaudy and vulgar and loud. And also, it's full of musicians, all a lot of dinner and dance musicians, jazz players, and people who go off and work on cruise ships. And then these would gather and in their recreational time, they'd jam in pubs or they'd form bands in pubs. And it's a really brilliant place as a musician to meet older musicians who everyone was really very welcoming, and that's kind of what Scarborough was like.
The 70s was massive for the Scarborough. It was like living on a film set. It wasn't Disneyland by any stretch of the imaginations, but it went through a massive growth spurt in the 70s. So this is before people started going abroad. So everybody was still holidaying in the UK. So you got all the stuff that had been around since the 40s, 50s and before. You got the mini railway, you got the swimming pool, you got all this stuff. And then you had this big explosion of, like, you got the chairlifts, you got the roller coasters, you got the dodgems, you've got the arcs. It was quintessential British holiday time. Go to the seaside, tray of chips, ice cream, bingo, B&B, that's it. Amazing.
I had the pleasure of running the Stage Door, which was a music venue in Scarborough that I managed. The Grandads used to tread those boards quite regularly. I came here from London via Manchester, and I was used to quite kind of vibrant scenes there. And I expected Scarborough to be a kind of sleepy backwater. And what I found was there was just kind of music everywhere. And I subsequently came to understand that because it's an old holiday town, there are a lot of hotels, and the hotels in those days used to employ musicians. So there were loads of bands working in the town. And a lot of the musicians ended up living here, bringing their kids up. So kids were brought up with kind of music around them, and lots of them were just kind of forming bands. And I think that was kind of part of the whole scene. And I remember we were running the Stage Door. I'd done a bit of a coup because the original owner of the Stage Door, his vision was for it to be quite a refined place with a bit of kind of cocktail jazz piano in the back. And I started booking punk bands and anybody who'd send me a tape that I liked.
So we wrote a lot about everything that was around us, things that you could see on a daily basis, and maybe taking it from a different perspective.
The bands we liked, they were more angry, and it was more. But you know, it was just, they're still observational bands. You know, bands that wrote about what was going on around them. In exactly the same way as we did, we put sprinkles on it and a 99, basically. You know, it was we just liked everything we saw and then imagined it just being even better.
Yeah, so at the time, I think what people found most interesting of all were that me and Steve weren't big drinkers. We weren't pissed when we were writing this stuff. We were stone cold sober. But we were really into food, kebabs, fish and chips, and so on and so on. So we used to go to chip shops, and we used to take an extra chip fork and then in pen write, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, and then put these chip forks on the wall. Chip advisor. I'm a very visual person, so I used to sort of like document everything with photographs. And then I think once I started to buy music, I was probably trying to express myself in the written word and document why I bought something, when I bought it. This is pre-internet, of course, so you probably had a lot of time to fill. I suppose early on, I started buying records, I think it was 1981. It'll say in the book, for sure, but I remember buying the Flash RR single because I'd been to see the film. So actually, when I think about it, the music that I first got into was probably soundtrack music. So again, I remember buying the theme from Hammer House of Horror, the theme from Postman Pat. I also remember my dad, I used to have a reel-to-reel cassette recorder, and I used to record adverts. And again, I think that's where we got the short, catchy songs from, was the fact that a lot of what I'd listened to was soundtrack and TV theme tunes. I started playing drums with a guy at church. We were getting lessons. I can't remember how I ended up in it, but I ended up in a Christian rock band. And I remember once playing in a field, in the middle of nowhere and getting an encore. We used to do Psalm 23 as an encore. Proper mental. Had to get out. And in that top room there on the left, at number 27, was where I had some guitars and amps and probably wrote a few bits of songs.
Is that is a lemon
It's a
top?
lemon
It's
top,
not
yeah,
a twist.
I think that's a lemon top selfie, is that? There we go. So lemon tops are the best ice creams ever. I think they were invented in Scarborough. We'll say they were.
I've never come across them elsewhere. Talk us through this lemon top.
So what you get is your cone, and then on top of your cone you get some vanilla, and then top of that you get some lemon sorbet, and then on top of that, for an extra 30p, you get a flake, a Cadbury's proper flake. Now you can also get a strawberry variant, which we'll see later on.
But
sometimes I've done a strawberry lemon mix, which is quite nice.
I've never tried that.
Have you not? You want to try that? It's off menu, so you have to ask for it.
Let's be clear, we're talking about a lemon top and not a lemon twist.
Lemon twist is different. So lemon twist is when the vanilla and the lemon are twisted.
Comes out the same thing at the same time.
Which is wrong, really. You want them separate.
You need to do the vanilla, then
the lemon, and then the flake.
flake.
Indeed, and we'll see a bit of that later on.
Yeah.
And I think Paquitos for me has always been the best place.
Paquitos or Pachitos?
Paquitos. Well, now you're Spanish, you'll say it's
Paquitos. And I think we basically were constantly on at Eric Jackson, telling him that we were in a band, which we weren't, that were great, that were much better than them. And one day he just called our bluff. He turned around and said, right, you bastards, we got a gig in 2 weeks and you're on the bill. So we said, yeah, of course, let's have it. We didn't have instruments, we didn't have songs, we didn't have a band name. But we were like, we're going to do it. We'll make this happen. We had to go out and buy guitars. Denis got the Happy Traum chord book. We figured we had enough time to learn a couple of chords, so we learned A and D. And we sat in my bedroom and wrote about 10 one-minute songs with those 2 chords.
We've got the chord book, here's 2 chords. And all of a sudden it was like, yeah, excellent things will come from this noise. A lot of the songs were written in your loft, weren't they? Up in the loft.
My converted
you had this
loft.
like trapdoor thing that came down. It would
Yeah.
be totally illegal now, it never passed building standards. So you had to pull this like
It was on weights, wasn't
thing
it?
down,
Yeah.
and you go up into the attic. And then we got quite a bit of freedom there, haven't we? We could make a little bit
you
of
could
noise.
pull the stairs up.
Yeah.
And we kind of
nobody could get in.
But then we remember Yellow Monkey Blood Puster recording.
That's ace.
It's got my dad shouting on it, and it.
For crying out, bloody loud, lad!
They had this list of names saying, oh, we're going to form a band. There's this list of names, and Grandads Don't Indicate was one of the names on this list. And I said, that one, that's really funny. So, yeah, that's how I discovered them. And then on that same day, offered them a gig in about 2 weeks' time, because my band had a gig booked. I said, I'll come and play if you want. And that was kind of their first gig.
Where all these traffic lights are, there used to be a roundabout, and it was called the Odeon roundabout, and it was like, you know, the main roundabout in Scarborough. As we were once driving around the roundabout, so you were the driver at that point, so we must have been in your dad's light blue Ford Fiesta. And as we drove around this roundabout, some old guy in a car pulled out in front of us at one of the junctions.
It was here, yes.
Yeah, just here.
Yeah.
And one of us looked at the other. I'll say it was me, because that's what I'm like. Turned to you and said, bloody hell, Steve, Grandads Don't Indicate. We didn't know there was a rule book. We weren't frightened of just doing things in the wrong order. As we've established, we had a name and a gig before we had guitars. So I reckon it was around about this spot here that I looked into this window and fell in love with a Honda Explorer in mahogany.
Mahogany.
Which I then took all the knobs off and put cooker knobs on. Having a guitar that went up to 10 wasn't loud enough, but I figured that there was a cooker shop that sold some really big knobs, and I thought actually being able to go up to gas mark 8 or 220 degrees centigrade for a solo was where it was at.
What did my first guitar look like? You should remember your first guitar, shouldn't you?
Exactly. But yours wasn't, you painted it black.
I painted it matte black, didn't I? But I remember buying it.
From there.
Coming up here and sitting on the bench. We went along with it, we got put on the bill, we were on the posters. And I remember us on the night, we were sat on the fire escape of the stage door, and we were really seriously considering just legging it. We were absolutely cacking it. We were like, But it was everything we'd fantasized about it. We never thought we were ever going to do it. We liked being just critical of everybody that was doing it. I've never been so terrified. It was like, at the venue where we knew everybody, where we were friends with everybody, we were literally about to go on stage and make the biggest tits of ourselves.
The first time I ever saw them was probably at the stage door, and there was just Denis and Steve saying, oh, well, this sounded all right in the bedroom, and singing daft songs. Clouds from Chuffing Nowhere, I seem to remember a song about sunbathing.
First song we ever wrote this at Scarborough Castle, and it's the last one we ever wrote up there and all. This is a nice, peaceful, sway kind of one, so if you can get swaying from side to side, sway kind of makes the song go along nicely.
I like to sit in the sun, soak up all this warmth, just cover up his glow. I know it's time to go, I really wouldn't care, but it's clouds from sorting nowhere.
And they were like a kind of a punk Laurel and Hardy, because they looked visually funny as well. Steve was little and Denis was big, and they were arguing and they couldn't play properly. And I was just thinking, if I'm sat here in the bedroom watching these sober, this is going to be brilliant in a pub when everyone's hammered. They're going to go down brilliant.
Which graveyard to get them from? These are my friends and I like money.
Even though there were just 2 chords, even though there was hardly any words to remember, we still fucked them up completely. We couldn't remember the very first song. It was just a total mess. And we were stood there, and I don't think anybody had ever seen anything like it in their lives. The only way to get through it was like just sheer bluff. And what we realised is that actually blaming each other for fucking up was really funny, and it kind of relieved the pressure a bit, and it felt good. And so after each song, we just basically tore into each other. We just swore at each other.
Has anybody seen that photo of a fat child over there? That's Denis, that is. That proves he hasn't grown fat overnight. He's been fat all his life.
And nobody knew what the fuck was going on. I was just looking on sheer bewilderment. There was nothing musical there whatsoever, but the entertainment was in us two making absolute twats of ourselves, but not caring and enjoying it. And I honestly believe that was the first and last gig I'd ever do in my life. And I think Denis felt the same. So we were gobsmacked when we were asked on the same night if we'd do another gig. Basically, make up shit, be daft, swear at each other, and get given money for food. It's like, what more could you want?
So on this very wall here,
This wall
here to our left, just by the barrier, the low bit there, when we'd done our first gig, we probably got a tenner, which was enough for us both to get a burger from the band and a tin of pop from Arundale's, and we sat on that very wall, scoffed away,
£half-pounder,
and thought, this is quite a good idea, because we've just arsed around on stage, and we've earned enough money to buy a burger, so let's do it again. And we did. Never mind Pink Floyd, The Wall. That wall is far more important.
But it then just became a thing where we just basically, every time we were out and about, we had an £half-pounder and sat on that wall.
Often there's nowhere else to sit, but walls are good. There's always a wall. You can buy kebab, you can buy fish and chips, just sit down on a wall. Just like being at home, really, isn't it?
Walls. Every time I've eaten with Denis, it's walls. You don't do restaurants. It's just sitting on a fucking wall. Let's go on that wall over there. That's his thing. It's his saying. Let's go on that wall over there.
Well, there'll be one along soon, in 15 minutes or thereabouts. Grandad's waiting for a bus.
I know.
It won't be long now, because we're dads, so soon we will be officially granddads.
I mean, if being a granddad just went on how you looked, you'd pretty much be there already. No?
The songs that mean the most to me are the really, really early ones that I heard, because I'd never heard anybody sing, like Lost in Space, where one of the lyrics is, "It's such a groovy place is space." You know, people don't write stuff like that. And I think that just tracks back to that thing about they didn't know that you're not supposed to do it like that, so they just did it how they wanted to do it.
And you know I'm lost in space. I am lost in space. It's quite cosmic, really being lost in space. I am lost in space. I am lost in space. Such a groovy place is space. There's three.
I remember when we took the bus to the Opportunity Knox audition in Manchester.
Did we take the bus to that?
Took the bus to that. We were on the top deck.
Right.
We were getting right excited. We had no idea
Did we go
what
dressed
to
as spacemen on the bus?
No, we didn't. We got changed there, but we had this. I remember we had the helmet and stuff. We borrowed the spaceman costume. It was this big, kind of paper mache helmet with a motorbike visor. But to make everything more spacey, we covered the acoustic guitar in tinfoil and our boots in tinfoil. And we walked into this big audition room, and we rustled. So every step was like this rustle. And there was this woman doing this act, and she just stopped doing what she was doing when we walked in, and everybody turned around, and the panel of judges turned around and looked at us, and we kind of froze. And then we took one step and it was like rustle, rustle, rustle. And every step.
This is like X Factor before X Factor. And the woman in front of us was dancing over swords. We came on in Bako foil. So there was a little bit of... And that was that.
We'd carry notebooks around and make notes of stuff that we saw that was funny.
Everything was written down in notebooks, absolutely everything. And, you know, you flick through it and it was clear that we were children of the 70s, so we just started writing about the gadgets that we had and that were around us, because that was the era of the crap gadget.
Hi, indeed. This is a sad song which requires the use of a stylophone to purvey its sadness.
Growing up in a seaside town and also the backdrop of it as well, it's incredibly English, which you hate at the time, but actually I quite like now in a weird way. It's full of plastic toys, full of bric-a-brac. It's a really odd place to grow up, and it's, at the time you're thinking, why am I not in London? Why am I not hanging around with The Clash or something or whatever? But now I look back and I'm really glad that was my teenage experience, because it was different, you know, and you define yourself against your background, don't you? So it's despite what was there, you made this stuff.
Crap 70s Gadgets is, in a way, I think, the Grandad's anthem.
Crap 70s Gadgets, I think that's the definitive Grandads Don't Indicate song. That is one of those Denis and Steve surrounded by, celebrating their childhood, you know, singing about their childhood and their teenage years.
Of course, Rolf Harris was an innocent children's presenter at the time, so there's nothing sinister about using a stylophone.
This next song is entitled Crap 70s Gadgets. It's about my house.
The keyboards are crap. Whenever you go and see a band live, you can never hear the keyboards, but somebody's plinky-plonkying around. Stylophone cuts through like ice through mustard.
Denis is the gadget boy. I mean, he look anything twatty, anything faddy, anything breakable. Gadgets makes me think of Denis. It's Denis in a song.
I'm Gadget Man. We never had a soda stream, but we had a lot of gadgets. And it was just super cool, getting the next thing. I mean, this is before iPhones, it's before iPads. Soda stream, that's where it was at. Technology was just exploding in the 70s, and you were going from blip blip tennis to little handheld games, then to Space Invaders and the arcades. And again, the arcades just went overnight from slot machines and pull-arm bandits to rows and rows of Space Invaders. Then it was Galaxian, it was Defender, it was Scramble. It just went on and on and on. And the seaside was the place for the computer game.
Denis would buy any guitar that he saw that he could afford in whatever condition it was in. If it was cheap and lurid looking, he would buy it. And they'd have a drum machine.
I think the bird-shaped piano was unplayable.
And lots of like blowy, squirty. And they'd have little like kazoos. Horns, like bicycle horns and stuff like that. Percussive nonsense.
Horsey, horsey, don't you stop.
An unusual sound echoes through Scarborough, almost reminiscent of those far-off Viking days, a Swiss alpine horn.
Being a two-piece, Denis and I quickly realised we could actually do all our publicity photos in the old black and white photo booths, which actually were remarkably good quality, cheap and instant. It was used on the poster for the Ripon College gig and maybe about 10 other gigs because we liked it a lot. And I had a cut here because I was having a yoghurt eating race. It was like down to the dregs of the yoghurt. My technique was to put my tongue right down to the bottom of the yoghurt carton, like that. And then I thought if I just, instead of moving my tongue, move the yoghurt carton. So I did that and basically cut my mouth open down the sides there. The thing is that I don't like yoghurt.
You've been sniggering.
And at
Why?
the stage door in Scarborough, a gig in aid of St Catherine's Hospice involving 4 bands. Headline band, Grandads Don't Indicate. Admission to that is £1.50 and it's all for charity, and it starts at 9 o'clock and they haven't told me what date it is.
I don't know if the Granddads would have taken off if the stage door hadn't have been there. And I'm not taking credit for that. I just think that the kind of band, the kind of outfit that they were, needed that type of venue. And the two things just kind of fit each other hand in glove.
More and more people started coming, especially when they started doing the dressing up. It was an event, everything that they did. We were all looking forward to it. Who knew what was going to happen? It was just great. It was an event and a half. They put everything into it, even though it was cardboard boxes and stuff. It was just fun.
All the best songs were written by the pair of us. One person would write one line, one person would write the next line. The songs spewed out. I really got this clear memory of us in my attic where we just rewrote songs like they just flew out.
What I liked about them was that they took the kind of daily aspects of Scarborough and often melded it with something that was global. So Ayrton Senna was a classic example of that one, which is effectively about boy racers going around the Marine Drive, melded with Ayrton Senna, the classic Brazilian Grand Prix driver.
Well, it's just funny, isn't it? It's just a daft song about a racing driver that's the most unlikely person to be riding around Scarborough foreshore. But in Denis and Steve's imagination, that would be great, wouldn't it, if he did?
Ayrton Senna wasn't that well known at the time, but he was a great racing driver, and we thought as the boy racers were going around the Marine Drive, he would have actually enjoyed going around the Marine Drive himself in his racing car. And it was a bit like Monaco. Once we got the song recorded, a little badge which John drew of Ayrton Senna, Grandads Don't Indicate, all went in an envelope. Ayrton Senna, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm sure he got it, wore the badge and loved the cassette.
Everybody that I knew in Scarborough went to the stagey, played in the stagey, and that was my little world in Scarborough.
So the stage door was like a second home to us, a real home from home. Paul and Jill made us really welcome. And if we hadn't got a gig for a while, then we'd just take a biro pen and write our names on the bottom of somebody else's poster, probably turn up without any guitars. And just as the support band were about to go on stage, oh no, we're first on the bill, mate, give us your guitars. And then at least we would get in for free.
We got to the stage door and there was the poster for the gig with the three bands as arranged. And then on the bottom, someone had added in biro, Grandads Don't Indicate.
So we did just write our name on their poster and then became pally with John, who was the main guitarist.
They got up with this bloody, like, carrier bags full of toys and, you know, kind of knock-off equipment and kazoos and whatever else they had in these carrier bags. And it was just very, very funny. And you were just charmed by them and entranced. And I kind of propped the bar up and watched the set with the lads out of our band. And we were just laughing our heads off.
But I always wanted a pair of Dunlop green flowers.
At that stage, they're not in any sense of the word musicians. I wasn't sure what they were.
The idea of putting the Granddads on as musical incompetence so that you'll look better is an absolute first-order error, because on the one hand, they are likely to drive away part of your audience, and the people that do stay are the ones who understand it and who aren't impressed by musical competence. You'll just be singing songs and making music, and it all looks a bit ordinary after the Granddads.
Yeah.
It used to be a thing when bands came to Scarborough, be that Death by Milk Float or whoever, we'd give them the Scarborough tour. And this often used to be after the stage door had closed at night, and used to involve us walking around the town until the early hours of the morning, showing everybody where the mini railway was, where it went to and from.
We would bond over trivia and shared equipment and stupid jokes, which would inevitably make their way into songs. Us and Blammo would pile up to Scarborough. You would do the gig the following day, down to Peazone Park, play on the crazy golf, and then on the beach playing cricket in the sunshine. You know, it was like going on your holidays and doing a gig and seeing your mates, you know.
Anybody could be a Grandad, even just for one day. And there was a whole host of people who would jump up on stage and play a stylophone or the drum machine. But Eric and John became regulars, and I suppose by default actually joined the Grandads full time.
I moved to Leeds to join another band, and Denis found out where I lived, and I basically came around brandishing a picture of Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen, on the back of which he'd drawn up a contract to say that I was now the new bass player in Grandads Don't Indicate. He just said, "You're now joining the band because we've got this gig and we need to have a full band to play this gig." So I signed it, and then that was it, really. Yeah, then I was in the band.
Now we're going to walk towards the corner cafe, which isn't there anymore, which is like this way. We're going to go past the lovely painted beach huts. So the cable cars round from here to Zoo Marineland, it was like, I don't know, it was like pre-Disneyland Florida for me.
Right,
We got like a roller coaster, there was dodgems, there was little car things that went round and about.
The best things were the polystyrene or fiberglass mountains, the volcanoes.
Yeah, and they had little monkeys with chains on, dancing on bikes.
They had Flipper.
The dolphin. I got pushed around by that dolphin.
Seriously?
Yeah, somewhere there's a cine footage of me in a dinghy.
It was a pushy
being
dolphin.
pushed around by its sort of like nose, like you do. Yeah. It's inevitable that Zoo Marineland and everything like that would stop. You can only exploit animals for so long, even in the 70s. In that era, wherever you went in town, there was always something major to do. So that was the big thing to draw you over this side. Zoo Marineland is really sad now. It's derelict. It's childhood gone, all your memories. It's eerily ghost-like and could have been beautiful to this day. So along here, further on, is the next thing that's gone from the Grandad's past, the corner cafe, which we did write a song about.
We did. Well, we spent a lot of time in cafes, and the corner cafe was a particularly special cafe because it had a view of the bay,
everything.
The donkeys, and it was probably one of our only poignant songs, I'd say, Denis. These windows here, this is where all the tables would be in the corner cafe. You'd sit in here with your cup of tea with your, what was it?
Jaffa cakes,
Jaffa
double
cakes.
pack of Jaffa cakes.
Looking out, and you'd be able to see the donkeys walking along, you'd be able to see people struggling with the push chairs on the sand.
Very kind of, very atmospheric, I always thought. Quite bleak little song about this bloke coming from Middlesbrough and stealing a car and hanging around the corner cafe.
I am sitting in the corner cafe. I am sitting in the corner cafe. And another donkey passes by. I travelled down from Middlesbrough for my holiday. Nicked a car and abandoned it in the bay and display. With a tourist information, we're playing incantation. Well, they packed me up with brochures and said, please enjoy your stay. And another donkey passes by.
We'd have our notebooks. Well, this is like a good idea for a song.
Well, I think that was the whole thing, wasn't it? That it was that good a place that actually you could come here for the weekend and just sit there with a coffee and 2 Jaffa cakes. You didn't need to go anywhere else. This is the best view in the world.
In the corner cab, another donkey passes by. If I was with my Uncle Rob, we would play a round of golf.
If I was with my neighbour Neil, I would climb the Ferris wheel.
If I was with my Uncle Hector, we'd find copper with his metal detector.
If I played those fruit machines, I'd find 3 cherries within my dreams.
If I were with my Uncle Stan, I would die a happy man.
If I was with that fat git Dennis, I'd rid society of his menace.
So, we're on our way to the south side. We've done the north side.
Well, we've done most of the north side. I'm looking forward to seeing the sooty machine. I haven't seen the sooty machine for a while. So now we're on the south side.
You can tell because it's right busy now, as opposed to the north side.
So this is like Las Vegas compared to the north side. It's just like the desert.
It's like Las Vegas compared to Las Vegas. It's got everything. Got rock, crabs, winkles. I'm going to show you a winkle in a bit.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'll show you.
And it's got the fair, of course.
At your risk.
It's not the train that costs the most, or the train that carries the post, but the train where lies the ghost of that old Casey Jones.
Ghost Train's gorgeous. And I got to play the whistle on that, which must have driven Dennis Barney. Because he thinks I'm a folky twat.
Yeah, the only thing that I think he actually owned was a tin whistle. Folky twat.
It's a bit twiddly, bit folky, and I don't like hearing my son sing on it.
It's one of those songs that Steve sang. He sang it so beautifully and so sort of straight. They just sang it like they really meant it, and it was just a really poignant song.
Casey's soul rides again on his all-time favorite train. Not the one from the TV, but the one down by the sea. Ghost train, I want to ride you. Ghost train, to climb inside you. Ghost train, don't you scare me over Julie. From Wild West to Ghost Grotesque, Casey holds those railroad lines all across the Indian Prairie. But now his new job is much more scary. Ghost train, I want to ride you. Ghost train, to climb inside you. Ghost train, don't you scare me over Julie.
I just love that smell, diesel and lobsters.
Like freshly cut grass.
Yeah.
It's not the train that costs the most, or the train that carries the post, but the train where lies the ghost of that old Casey
I was thinking about them the other day. I was thinking what they'd never do is try to colonise anywhere else. They invite you into their world, and that's it. They don't try to infringe on other people's world. They just stand there and say, look at this, isn't it wonderful? What we experience. And then there you are with them.
We loved everybody in the audience, and we wanted them to be part of everything we did. But we genuinely loved everybody that came to the gigs. We were definitely not taking the piss. We just wanted... We didn't mind if they took the piss out of us. In fact, we kind of encouraged it. We had really thick skins.
So there's an argument to say that anybody could be a Grandad, even if it was just for one night, because it was so easy to become a part of that performance. If you're an audience member, it was not unthinkable that there would be a role for you in that night's gig.
So having John in the band was like playing with an older brother. He knew things more than you did. He knew that things should perhaps have a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and all of that sort of stuff. He'd been in bands. He knew the formula. So it was quite handy having him around. And he was also like really arty and had a complete different way of looking at things to the two of us. So it was like a third angle joining the two angles that we had got.
Hello, is that Bob's recipe down there, recipe?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess we've got land speed record fricassee. Yeah? Which is, you take 20 pounds of potatoes and you force them through the speaker mesh in an 800-watt Marshall stack, and then you get a pile of cheese and oatmeal, and you get 58 Marlboro bitumen strength, and you eat them with some fish tank gravel. For dessert, we have Hoover Dam crumble tart.
Steve would always be trying to work out how few notes he could get away with playing, so he could, because he was lazy. So he'd be like, oh, if I can do it like this, same three notes all the way through the song, I'll just play that. Steve would be trying to work out the fewest he could do. That was his aim. Denis would be like, how much noise can I make at one time? That would be his approach. And then John would be kind of playing like diminished 19ths, and like swinging all these folk jazz chords up and down all over the place and putting little riffs in.
Hey, you have to show me what a winkle is. What if you don't have any?
Well, let's have a look. They're going to have winkles. I'm going to give you some seafood education.
I'm not eating it. Winkles. I'm not eating them. Seriously, I'm not eating one.
What do you mean you're not going to eat them? Hello. How much are the winkles? Thanks very much. Right, Denis. Can't believe you've lived here, grew up here, and you never come across these. You get that off, right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well, it's like eating somebody's earwax.
And you shove it in your mouth. Look. And they're already really sweet and salty and tasty. Thanks a lot, love. Here we go. Right. Get the cap off. This one's yours, then. It's got your name on it.
Shuff it out.
Got to get the pin in, twist it around. And you
It's like something out of Alien versus Predator. Right, I'm not putting the pin in my mouth.
Why do you have to put the pin in your mouth?
I think I prefer... Oh, it's got sand in it. Oh. Disgusting. Fucking hell.
You spit it out.
It was grit. It was just sand. I'm not having any more. Well,
oh my God. Such a baby.
It's going to ruin my lemon top. No, it's got teeth and everything.
It's not got teeth. It's not like some out of Star Wars.
No, thank you. Ugh. No, eat it yourself.
Eat swat. This is Southside sand, isn't it, then?
Indeed, look at that.
Look at
beautiful.
Southside sand.
Quality. The engine room of Scarborough.
It's red hot, innit?
So even if you had no money, you could come down here and have a whacking day out.
I thought you were going to say something else.
This has been here longer than you and I, Steve. Well, it's great to see people in the water as well. The sea will always be there, the sand will always be there, that romantic charm of going to the seaside and getting away from the built-up world and getting to the edge of the land, if you like, will always be there. This is what it's all about. Whoa, whoa, that was a close call.
I absolutely love it, Den. I absolutely love Scarborough by the sea.
Sooty machine. I always wanted to be in the Sooty band.
Oh my
word, what the hell is that?
I hope for your sake that Sooty Machine's there, Dennis, otherwise you're going to be devastated.
No names
Got no names?
No. You always used to have names.
So tell me why this Sooty Machine is so important to you, Dennis, because it's something you bark on about.
Well, you've got Sooty, Sweep and Sue in a band, so to me they were a three-piece, like the Jam. And they're in a box on the beach and you put a coin in and you get a prize out and they play a song. I always wanted to be in the Sooty band. That looked like the perfect life to me. You made money, you give out prizes and you're on the foreshore looking out to sea every day. You go and put your money in the slot, the band play a song and out pops a prize. Genius. Here we go, we're off. E-I-E-I-O. I think the Sooty Machine has always been in Scarborough. Yeah, I always recall it. It may have moved from one arcade to another, but it's always been there, looking at the age of the puppets.
What are we going to win?
Is it going to come out that side or this side?
This side. I'm on that one.
We've been robbed.
Attention! Sooty has run out of prizes. Please inform the attendant. Thank you. Attention! Sooty has run out of prizes. Please inform the attendant.
Who do we sell?
Thank you.
What are you having, lemon top?
99 lemon top.
Okay. Could I have 2 lemon tops with a flake, please?
£4.60, please.
Cheers, thank you.
Cheers.
See you later, Steve.
You got over the Sooty disappointment.
I think so.
Just because you were going on about the Sooty Machine for so long.
The song made up for it somehow. And the fact that I got to sing along, it was like I was in the band. We'd be listening to the Grease soundtrack one night and you'd be like, hey, why don't we do Grease? You knew that it was impossible to do Grease on a zero budget, but that was part of the challenge.
It was a beautiful little world that they'd created, that they invited you into. And if you stuck with them, you would be rewarded.
Tonight my magic treat smells really nice up here now. And remember, stick to roads.
It was something like I hadn't seen before. It was part pantomime. I mean, the two guys racing around with the cardboard cars on. They even left the venue and ran down the street and came back in again. And it was kind of mayhem. It's kind of grown-up pantomime.
It is the only gig ever that features a car chase with two guys wearing cardboard cars who go out of the pub, run down Aberdeen Walk chasing each other and back in and time it for the end of the song. Fucking genius.
It's a sort of band, sort of art project, sort of a Dadaist art school movement without the art school.
Go, 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 chicken face. Go, 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 chicken looking ace. Go, 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 chicken face. Go, 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 chicken looking ace.
They used to come down and play gigs when the band I was in at the time and support us. So I saw them a few times just as the two-piece, and also with Tony playing the Muppet Babies drum kit.
Now, Tony is 6'2", something like that. He's quite a big, tall fella, and he sat on a little stool behind this drum kit with his knees up round his ears. And we mic'd the whole thing up with half a dozen microphones on it, so like a professional, you would professionally mic up a drum kit. So it did look quite good with Denis and Steve either side. And they played a gig. It sounded absolutely terrific. I thought, yeah, this lot have got something.
There was a gig in London, at a pub in London, and it was, oh, do you want to come down and do this? Yeah, great, yeah.
So Andy the Cockney knew a lot of the songs because we'd played with the Giggle Stick and the Love Truncheons, his band, in London a few times, and vice versa, they'd played with us, and we'd often say to him, I'd just jump on the drums for Grifter, and he would.
They'd given Andy a tape the day before of Engrossed in Toast or something, and then we started off and did a completely different set of songs that he'd never heard.
Bring your drums along, they haven't got a drummer, and we set up. I played my first gig with them without a rehearsal, not knowing who half of them were. John had joined in the interim period, and I had no idea who the hell he was.
There was a small complaint from Andy at the end of the gig because the cassette that we'd sent him hadn't got the songs on that we played.
So we did the gig, and then afterwards I was introduced to Andy, the drummer. So I hadn't actually met him when I first played with him.
Wasn't even introduced to him until after the gig had finished.
He drummed that night, and then Steve and Dennis were like, oh, by the way, we've got a recording studio booked tomorrow, and we're doing 5 or 6 songs. You're drumming on them.
So, yeah, and then the next day we went off and recorded 5 or 6 songs at a recording studio without any rehearsal. Well, one of them being my first bike was a Grifter, which was kind of one of the more famous of the Grandad songs. And it went from there. Once I'd recorded it, that was it. I was in the band.
We did them all just live, and then we overdubbed some guitars and vocals afterwards. But it was really quick. We recorded everything, and it's like, right, we've got an hour left. Now we've got to mix it all, and we mixed it there and then live. There was no getting the levels. It was like press play on the tape and then mix like mad.
It actually starts to sound like a real band now. By being a full band, all of a sudden you were able to get proper gigs. So we were able to play the Duchess of York in Leeds. So that was somewhere we'd be playing one week, and the next week you'd be going to see Henry Rollins. You sat on the sofa that Nirvana sat on, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, we're in with the big boys now. Suddenly there was this really good 5-piece band that still was recognisably the Grandads.
Give us a bell, 355 962. The first 2 people can go and see the Grandads live there. I think they're fast becoming a cult band, Grandads Don't Indicate. Good evening.
Good evening.
Right, okay, the Grandads Don't Indicate. Quite well known in Scarborough. For the people that don't know, tell us about the history of the band.
We started out about 8 years ago with me and Steve and a drum machine, actually.
Yeah.
And we've progressed slightly.
It's a good job, because I recall seeing you, and you were pretty awful that first gig, weren't you?
Absolutely.
We tried hands at cookery programmes and a few musicals, and that really didn't seem to spark off any success. So we figured perhaps learning to play might be the way to do it instead of cooking apple pies.
Steve isn't making that up. They have cooked apple pies on stage. You've done Grease, haven't you? You've done the Inspire Granddads. So, and it's all gone down very well. I think learning to actually play might all spoil it all for you,
The War of Danger, the thing that we actually liked, we were going to wreck it. That were a strong possibility, that you might just end up with just another kind of, adequate pop band. 1 or 2 people did say that something had kind of gone because it was not as crackers and not as kind of driven by Denis and Steve's personalities, perhaps, as it had been.
Getting it wrong was a huge part of what we did. Getting it wrong was essential to the fun of it. So practicing was not really something we did. We wrote a song, we moved on, we hoped we'd remember it, and we rarely remembered it.
Seeing live bands was interesting and could be quite intense depending on who you were seeing and what they were doing. And usually The things that I was picking up on was when things went wrong or the drummer got cheesed off and kicked his drum kit over. That was exciting. It was anarchic. It was real.
You know, to start with, because they literally did learn to play on stage in front of other people and made it up as they went along, and there were no rules. They didn't know what the rules were, so they weren't about breaking rules. They were just about doing whatever they wanted. Whatever they found entertaining or amusing or exciting, they would just bring that to what they were doing, which was really... It made it ace. And, you know, later on, I think, like, initially, like, things like, you know, putting a drum machine on the stage with them, and then just telling people in the audience to shout out a number. They program that into the drum machine, press play, and then attempt to play their song along with whatever rhythm came out of the machine, which is going to be end in disaster. But it's like, what's more punk than doing that? Do you know? It's brilliant.
Quick, a number between 0 and 99. 62.
That idea of random drum patterns, I love that idea. I think that's a really great idea. To get the drum machine to play a different pattern, you have to make a song at that point on top of it. I really like that idea. I like jamming. I like that thing when if somebody said, just gave me a bass or guitar and said, go on stage and play that band now, I love that. There's no safety net. Just go out there and do it.
It's very Yorkshire to do this thing where you probably class yourself as a failure before you've even started. So it wasn't a case of aiming high. It was just a case of doing stuff. And yeah, I was never going to be as good as this person or that person. So I'd just have fun doing what I was doing anyway.
If people didn't like them, you know, I'd say, no, you're wrong, because they are really good. Clearly you don't appreciate them. Do you know what I mean?
When they were screaming fuck off at us at gigs, to me, that meant carry on doing what you're doing. It's perfect.
I can recall times when people just left, you know, and people just walked out. But the kind of force of it was like, this is what we're doing, you know. If you don't like it, fine, you know, leave the room, you know. But this is happening, and we're not going anywhere. So, you know, I think it was great. Yeah.
I think we were once described as being like a nail bomb going off in a toy shop, which I think is a marvellous description of kind of the kind of shithouse wall of Grandad's wall of sound, which we kind of produced.
Sometimes people genuinely hated them, but they didn't care, and they would just like plough on. They would give abuse back. You know, they would swear at the audience or whatever if necessary, but they just weren't bothered. They seemed unruffled by it, and in their own little magic little bubble of like mayhem.
It would shamble on, and there would be pauses, far too long pauses for dicking about. There was no rock and roll climax. It just ground to a halt. And everybody went home.
Their shows would always be quite eventful, you know, things would happen. But it never occurred to me to say, no, you can't do that. And even when things got a little bit messy, it just went with the territory. I think, you know, gigs weren't just gigs were happenings. You know, things, it was you could argue it was like art. It was like a kind of, the gig was part of an installation, you know. And I think the audience got that.
Can we have Cilla Black in the room, please? Thank you.
We gave the audience members rigged questions, the answers to which were the titles of Grandad songs. And then I put my bass on and we'd all go and do a song. And then we really gave the winning couple a prize and like sent them out into town and said, come back in 20 minutes and tell us if you've had a snog, sort of thing, you know, which is ace. I found it tremendously liberating playing with the Granddads, yeah, because they would never say, I want you to play this. They would be amazed that you'd thought of something. They were always really chuffed with whatever you did, which was really liberating, because then it would, you know, I would just get more and more ridiculous in playing stuff, making it harder for myself. But you could always drop back and play something simple, or you could just go as wild as you wanted, depending on how it felt, you know, that was tremendous fun, yeah.
We were sat on stools. I remember looking down at him where he was totally fucking wigging out, thinking that's just... Scylla won't do that.
The gigs could be messy, they could be chaotic. The audience would throw beer mats at us, pint glasses, you name it. But it was all part of the show, and most of the time they'd stay at the end of the night and help you tidy up.
I see you over there. Yes, you. Come on over and let Zoltar be sharing with you your fortune.
Later on, we did rehearse a little bit, which was, I think, I remember that being a nightmare for Andy when he was driving up from London, driving up all the way from London to come to Leeds to rehearse for a couple of hours and drive all the way back on a work night, I don't know how he did it. So we did later on start to rehearse, and I think the songs got more complicated and maybe benefited from that later on. Stuff like Gadgets and Favourite Smells and stuff were much more sophisticated musically, I guess, than the early stuff.
It's the chopper.
It's the chopper. It's a rally chopper. So I think this one hasn't got the gear stick, so this is not a Mark 1. Oh, it's Mark 3, look. Chopper Mark 3, what a beauty. So the Grifter was ace, but I always wanted a chopper. That'd be worth some money, that.
It's beautiful, no?
It's got the horn, it's got the lights, it's got the wing mirrors, it's got
Is that
dust.
your chopper?
So it's a long story, but we wrote a song about a chopper. Back in the day. You go first, Steve.
I'm not
couldn't
going
possibly.
on it, that's your domain. It's your domain, dude.
I won't break it, will I? Hang on. It's been a while. Chuff me. Hey up. This is like a dream come true. Wait! Let me get into first gear.
It's bringing a bit of a tear to my eye.
Oh, yes. King of the hill. Check me out. Joe, it's a great view from here. You got the rock shop, you got the crab sticks. This is chuffing ace. Evening, gents, you all right?
It was like men pretending to be children, pretending to be men.
Whoa, hey.
And the world was complete.
Here he comes.
It takes a while to get the front wheels really small.
Very elegant,
I love it.
I've forgotten how beautiful you look on a bike.
Me too.
It's like, just brings it all back. Honestly, I was welling up. Cheers, mate.
All right.
I really appreciate
Very
that.
much.
I do remember him ringing up one night and just to shoot the breeze kind of thing a long time before I joined. And either him or Steve going like, oh yeah, we've got this great new song. Wait till you hear Grifter. Wait till you hear Grifter.
Towards the end, Dennis got fed up of playing Grifter because everyone was like, that was their signature tune. But it's totally brilliant, so what are you going to do?
A bicycle on stage would not be a particularly outlandish thing to happen at a Grandad's gig. Of course there'd be a bicycle on stage.
The initial drum fill that starts Grifter was created by Denis and Steve with the drum machine that they used to start with. And it came from the drum machine, and then every drummer afterwards, I just copied what was on the drum machine. Diggy, 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 diggy.
Speed, hand grip, shit.
What's your name?
Josh.
Josh, much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah.
You got the double wing mirrors.
Oh, no, I should have done that.
You didn't
next
do
time.
it.
Putting a stick in their own spokes, they didn't need a stick. They hadn't tightened the spokes up in the first place. I don't know if you've ever been on a bicycle at speed when the wheel collapses. It's exhilarating until you hit the tarmac.
The best gigs, we're just an octopus. You know, we're just a mess of limbs and everybody playing at once and talking at once, and you know, a really nice mess to be in the middle of. You know, but there was some good music as well.
The Grandads were innocent and magic and just thrilling.
The reason I left the Grandads was because I was playing in 2 bands and I didn't have a job and it was really expensive and neither band got paid. Before I left, I knew Pam. I'd been in a band with Pam Brewster before. She's from Scarborough, she knows the Grandad, she's seen the Grandads loads of times, and she's a great bass player. And me and Steve literally went through the songs with her one afternoon, and then that was it.
Probably a little bit intimidated, but really excited. I mean, who wouldn't be? Who didn't want to be in the Granddads? You know, and I just thought it'd be great. They were nice bass lines, I liked them. I think I did them a lot better than Jackson, personally.
Goldfish Memory Jukebox it's about the whole Beck Hall falling into the sea. The guests are checking out, the fish are checking in is a reference to people who literally didn't have time to finish their breakfast before the hotel. It's a Scarborough thing. Hotel fell into the sea. How could you not write about it?
This is my friend Henry. He's got a goldfish jukebox memory. He's got an accent he can't lose. In the mouth of a worry goose. Let's go down to Vision Street with the worry goose in the passenger seat, with a voice like Edwin Hughes. In the mouth of a worry goose. Oh, worry goose. Large hotels coming and the guests are checking out, the fish are checking in. What's your breakfast swim? Somewhere there's a terrible smell of bags and makeup and Boots hair gel and 2020 juice from the mouth of the worry goose. This card comes from the seafront. Someone's gonna have to bear the brunt of inarticulate abuse from the mouth of the worry goose. Oh, worry goose. Large hotels are coming and the guests are checking out, the fish are checking in. What's your breakfast swim?
Yeah, the Worry Goose is a roundabout near Rotherham that me and Andy would drive around.
There's the Goldfish Memory Jukebox video, which is a marvellous piece of cinematography, in my opinion. But I just do not remember doing it at all. Don't remember doing it at all.
Large hotels are coming and the guests are checking out, the fish are checking in. What's your breakfast swim?
The video, I have no memory whatsoever.
Boots hair gel and 2020 juice from the mouth of the world.
I must have been there because there's evidence of me, but don't even remember where it was.
Heavy metal was just shit. It just was. It was all haircuts and loud nothingness. And the local band Little Angels really cheesed us off. They managed to get onto the top of the pops. So one night I took in one of our gigs, one of their picture discs, smashed it on the side of the stage. They were in the other room and they were really unhappy about it, apparently.
You just knew that something was going to happen at some point in that gig that you weren't expecting.
Everybody knew it was kind of okay to do stuff. And the chainsaw incident is probably an exception in that.
Do you see Tim Turnbull? Did you see him walk past with the chainsaws?
I was playing bass on the night of the chainsaw incident.
It was all quite innocent, I thought.
Tim Turnbull, very good friend, lovely man, in a band called Tim Turnbull's Live Lobsters. He was also a tree surgeon, and one day he turned up at this gig with his chainsaws, and I think he had a few pints.
Having been invited into Grandad's world, it all got a little bit out of hand.
There were a load of students who were at the gig who were not particularly getting what we were trying to do, and they were sat on the floor. They were kind of just being really cool students, etc. And I think Denis incited it.
If anybody doesn't dance, he's going to saw you up and put your heads in the fridge with the rest of them.
Denis shouted, "Tim Turnbull's got his chainsaw. Chainsaw, chainsaw," and then a chant went up, and it seemed the most logical thing in the world to do was to get the still out and crank it up.
And he came in, fired the chainsaw up, the students danced.
And I danced about with a live chainsaw in a confined space. Then this little goth girl who was sitting on the floor listening tried to reach out and touch the blade. So the sensible thing, obviously, was to demonstrate to her that it was a dangerous tool and dig it into the stage.
Literally chainsawing shit in front of us while we played. And we carried on.
We spent the rest of the gig in a haze of two-stroke, choking on that, but it was a cracking gig.
If they'd have put the kind of same sort of gigs on as they did at the Stage Door particularly, then they probably wouldn't have got an audience, and they certainly wouldn't have got a second booking.
So what was the worst moment in the band? Well, yeah, when we called it a day, I guess it was sad.
It's all good, you're on a ride, you're on a roll, and then all of a sudden songs start to go in a different way. Steve started writing songs about his girlfriend who lived in space and all this sort of stuff, and it was just like, yeah.
There wasn't a demise of the Grandads, not really. I think a lot of the things that we'd kind of wanted to do, certainly in my time with it, you know, we'd sort of done.
It became not my band anymore. It became the band of the others. We actually released a single. None of my songs were on the single, so that was particularly hurtful. I tried to make it at one point an EP that had got 3 or 4 songs so I could squeeze one on, but we were having none of it, so that was it, game over.
And it's a shame because I love everybody in the band to bits still, and I don't see them as much as I'd love to. God, why do I have to go and say that? They're cunts. They're just going to go, you twat. It's like, no one else is going to be nice, are they? No one else is going to be nice about me. Because I know them. They're all twats.
Steve, something's come in the post I need to tell you about. We've been nominated for the Scarborough Music Trail. Grandads Don't Indicate wrote many a fine song about this beautiful town. They were named near here following an incident at the Odeon Roundabout in 1988.
We're making a film. What? I'm making a film with my friends.